Hey folks, what if I told you there was a method to be able to create unstoppable confidence in your life and power whenever you wanted, wherever you wanted, and with whomever you were with? Would it be worth it for you to just listen for a couple minutes to find out what that method is so that you can start applying it in your life to create unstoppable confidence on demand? Well folks, how you doing? I'm Michael Blondgortz. I'm coming to you from my home office here in Maryland. And in the next several minutes here, that simple method, in fact it's a 6-step formula, is going to be revealed to you in the next coming minutes here. So stay tuned, make sure you watch the video all the way to the end, and you'll be shown exactly what that method is, and I'll tell you how you can start implementing it into your life to create immediate results. So folks, today we're going to be talking about a concept called anchoring. That's right, anchor. What is an anchor? Okay, well yeah, an anchor. It's used on a boat, right? They drop it off of the side of a boat to keep a boat from moving around. An anchor keeps a boat in place. No, we're talking about a different anchor today, folks. In fact, it's definitely different. We're gonna go ahead and write it out here. What is an anchor? Anchor. So A-N-C-H-O-R. What is an anchor? Well, an anchor, a very simple concept. An anchor is a connection between a stimulus and a certain emotional response. So again, you have the stimulus here, and it's a connection between this and a certain emotional response. So for example, a very famous study that's well known is the study of with Pavlov, right? Pavlov and the salivating dogs. If you remember that study, the study was basically the stimulus was the bell, right? So the study was done, and what they did is every time they fed the dog food, they would ring a bell, right? And after a while, all they had to do was ring the bell, and the dog would salivate because the dog linked up in its head that every time the bell rang, there would be food presented to the dog. So the stimulus here was the bell. A certain emotional response was the dog salivating, right? So that's a very, and I'm sure most of you know, if not, look up Pavlov and the salivating dogs to find out exactly what that study is all about. But you know, in common day, basically, you know, a very common anchor for a lot of people, right, is a big yellow M, right? We see the big yellow M, and many of us, we think right off, you know, we're conditioned to either think one of two things, right? That it's either cheap, crappy food, or it's good value and it's a tasty meal, right? So, you know, whenever we see the arches, the golden arches, our brain is conditioned to think, right, of what that means to us. It's a symbol. So that's another example of an anchor that we see almost on an everyday occurrence. So, but we're going to get into it here. We're going to show you exactly, I'm going to get into now the 6-step formula that you can use to create unstoppable confidence in your life at any time. So let me go ahead and erase this off the board here, and we'll get started on that. And, you know, I'll give you a quick story here first of my own personal life. I'm going to give you a story of myself. You know, believe it or not, folks, I was actually a very introverted and shy person as a child. Growing up, I was afraid to even talk to people and express myself, which held me back from a lot of things. And obviously, you know, when girls was one of them in high school, I was afraid to ask. I couldn't even go up to girls that I liked. I couldn't even tell them how I felt about them because I was just, well, I was in shell shy. I was just froze up, right? I got all nervous and couldn't even vocalize my feelings. So, you know, it would have been nice to have this tool that I'm about to present to you. I would have been nice to have that back then, but you know, I didn't have it, and that's okay because now I have it. And moving forward, I have the tool to use and implement from this point forward. So, but I was very quiet. In fact, my first official girlfriend in high school, I was able to obtain her through a chat room. If you remember the chat rooms back in the day, I was actually in a AOL chat room typing away here. You know, ended up meeting a girl, and she was gracious enough to be my girlfriend, even though we met on the internet. But again, I was hiding behind a computer typing to a girl in a chat room just using a keyboard and a computer screen, right? So, and now here I am talking to you on a video, but I did have to go through that, and I was actually very shy and introverted, which kept me back from a lot of things in life. But we're going to go over the 6 steps here to create unstoppable confidence, like I said, on demand in your life. So we're going to put it up here, 6 steps to creating a anchor. So we'll start off here in number 1. Number 1 actually is pick a memory. Pick a memory. What does that mean exactly? Well, in order to create an anchor, you have to trace back in your life, in your past, in the past, trace back. And for us today, for today's purposes, we're talking about confidence. Now, you can create an anchor in different emotional states, whether it be confidence, motivation, inspiration, ambition, courage, whatever you want to create for yourself. Well, for today's purposes, we're going to talk about confidence, because from confidence stems power, and almost all the other states can come from confidence. So let's talk about confidence today, and I'll give you an example. In my life, basically, a moment that I was very, very confident with myself was actually, I remember back, there were several times, and one of them was actually on my first public speaking engagement, because public speaking was a big fear for me, getting in front of groups. I always had a tough time doing that, as many people do, right? But my first public speaking engagement was about a topic that I was passionate about, but I was very nervous. I was obviously nervous, shaking, and could barely get up there to do it. But after I was done with that talk, my confidence soared through the roof. I basically, I had a fear, and I stepped into that fear to eliminate it. So a lot of times, the best way to get over a fear is just to step right into it, whatever that may be, and a lot of times it just dissolves, right? Because a fear is really false evidence appearing real. It's really just an illusion. But once you step into your fear, you can easily overcome it. But I remember that moment when I finished my first public speaking lecture, talk, whatever you want to call it. I remember how I felt. I remember how amazing I felt, how accomplished and confident I felt at that moment. So I'm going to use that moment to create for myself an anchor, which I can link back to at any given time to step back into that confidence and to create it at present moment. So what I want you to do, and I'm going to give you a little bit of time here to go ahead and think back to a memory that you had. And maybe it's a time, maybe it's when you got your first job. Maybe you had an interview and you landed your very first job, and you felt incredible. Your confidence was through the roof, because you knew that basically you got what you sought after, right? You were looking for a job that you really wanted. You got the job, and you just, in that moment, as soon as you found out you got the job, that emotional state of confidence, that's what I want you to look back to. It may be when you first got your job. It may be when you asked your first girl out and she said yes. Maybe it was when you graduated high school. Maybe it was when you graduated college. Maybe it was when you did your first recital as a musician player. Maybe you play music and you completed your first recital or first gig, right? And you had that feeling of just total confidence because you knew you took on something that you once feared, but you got through it, and that confidence, it was very, very strong at that point, right? So it could be any of those situations. I'm just trying to give you some examples. So what I want you to do now, if you don't have a memory that you can think of readily, what I want you to do, you can imagine one and make one up in your head. Although it's going to be a lot more powerful if you use one from your past, a real experience that you had, because that's more real, because you actually went through all those sensations and you were in that emotional peak at the time. So the best route to go, which I recommend, is think of an experience in your past where you just felt very powerful, very confident in the moment. And I want you to think back to that moment right now. I'm going to give you a moment where I just take a quick sip of water. Alright folks, well, if you haven't thought of one, you can always pause the video and come back to this later. But for now, we're going to move forward here. I hope you have a memory picked out. So, First step is pick a memory. Step 2 is associate the memory. Associate the memory. What do I mean by that? Associate the memory means really relive that moment. Really get into that emotional state. Really put yourself back in that clear picture. Even close your eyes if you have to put yourself back in that emotional state at that time when you had that powerful moment that you landed. Maybe you landed your first job. You asked your first girl out and she said yes. Maybe you, like I said, graduated from a school. Maybe you just played your first gig. Maybe you even had your first speaking engagement like I did. And you had that moment afterwards where you just felt so powerful and so confident in the moment. So that's what I want you to do. Associate the memory. Make the picture in your head brighter, clearer, and more vivid. And really zero in on that moment and really get in that emotional state again. That's what I mean by associate the memory. Now, step 3 here is anchor the feeling. Now, how exactly do you do that? How do you anchor the feeling? Well, to anchor the feeling, you got to create a trigger, which is going to put you back in that state, right? And it's a trigger that's unique to you. So I would recommend something that's fairly simple. It can be almost anything really, but a nice, easy one here is just you can either pick 2 fingers, rub them together. You could rub your earlobe. You could do a whole bunch of things. You could do a fist pump. You could clap. You could hit your chest. You could tap your nose a couple times. Whatever you want to come up with. But here's my recommendation. If you're going to be doing this in public, right? Say you see a girl that you want to tap into your state right away. You don't want to do something kind of funny and off the wall or inappropriate, right? So pick a trigger that's going to be appropriate in case you use it in public, before an interview or maybe before you go on stage to perform, things like this. So think of one now, and for today's purposes, we'll just, we'll use rubbing 2 fingers together. That'll be your trigger. So go ahead and pick a trigger now, and that will be one that you refer to, which will actually help you get back into the emotional state of confidence. So go ahead and create a trigger right now. I'll go ahead and put step 4 up here. Step 4 is release at the peak. So release at the peak. And what I want you to do with that is basically take your trigger, which is rubbing 2 fingers together for today's purposes. Again, you can make up your own, but I'm using 2 fingers rubbed together. And like I said, get back in the emotional state. I was talking about associate the memory. Now in that step, that's where you want to really hone in on getting that visualization, that feeling of the moment that you were in, and really relive it, really absorb it into your body. And when you do that, when you're at the peak of that emotional state, when you felt powerful and unstoppable, I want you to use your trigger, okay? So that means you would rub your fingers at that emotional state, the peakness. Go ahead and do that. That's going to set the anchor. When you do that, you have now triggered and used your trigger basically to set it and align it with your emotional state of being powerful and confident. So go ahead and do that. And number 5 is actually test it. Test. And what I mean by this is, now that you've set the trigger, which is linked up to the emotional state that you were in, that powerful one, right? Remember I told you to think about a powerful situation that you were in, a very confident situation? Now that the trigger is set, I want you to test it. I want you to walk away for a bit and walk away for 30 seconds and do something totally unrelated to any of this. And then what I want you to do is come back to it and then use your trigger again. Rub those 2 fingers together or whatever your trigger is. And notice your body going back into that emotional state of when you're unstoppable, when you felt powerful, when you felt confident. Your body will actually go back into that because you've set up an anchor within your body, if that makes sense to you. So we're going to last step here is repeat. Right? Practice makes perfect. Repeat it. I recommend repeating this 3 to 4 times. Going through the 6 steps, repeating it 3 to 4 times. That will really set your anchor in place by using your trigger, right? So, and then now the more effort you put into anything, obviously the better you're going to get at it, right? So the more effort you put into this, the better you're going to get. However, by doing it just 3 to 4 times through, you're going to set that anchor, and you'll have that anchor probably set for a couple weeks. Like I said, I was saying, if you do it every 2 weeks, you'll basically be able to use that trigger for basically infinite for the rest of your life. As long as you kind of tap back into it every 2 weeks and go through these 6 steps, you'll be able to use that trigger anytime you want, anywhere, with whomever you're with, and whatever you're doing. You can create that level of confidence on demand. And it could be used, like I said, before you're going in for a job interview. You could be using it before you go on stage, or maybe before you're asking out that girl or guy that you really like, but you just haven't had the confidence to be able to go up to them and speak to them. So I hope this comes in handy, folks. These 6 steps here are very simple to use, okay? I broke it down so that you can simply follow these along and create your own trigger and from an anchor, remember, a memory that you had in the past, and be able to tap into that confidence, that power, and simply use that at any time in your life to create the results that you want for yourself. So folks, hope this has been of value to you. I was happy to bring it to you because it's a tool that's been very useful and very powerful in my life as well, to be able to create this kind of emotional state at any time I want. So guys, take this today, take it and apply it in your life. If you're looking to create even more confidence in your life and more power and more leverage with using the power of the internet like I'm using right now, then I provided a link to you at the bottom of this page here. Click on that link and go ahead and type your email, and you'll be shown a free video that's actually going to reveal exactly how I went about applying this information into a system that you can use to monetize your own power and confidence using the internet. So go ahead and check that out as well. And folks, we'll see you on the next video. It's been good coming to you today. Make it a great day.